Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank you for being here, Commissioner. And wanted to ask about the E-rate program. So a state like New Hampshire, we have many rural areas in our state, and we've really, I think, been left behind on this program. So if you look at the history in New Hampshire, we've been 50th out of 50th for many years. And in 2014, I think we moved up a little bit, but we're still at the bottom of the list, unfortunately, toward the bottom. And of course, we're a net donor state, so my constituents are paying into this, but not getting back even the full value of their dollar, and quite a diminished value if you look at the overall fund. And so in rural areas, what I'd like to know, so we've had this discussion about your vote and others to increase the cap to $1.5 billion on E-rate. But I would like to know, what are we going to do to address adequate distribution of E-rate? Because your role at the FCC, we can't leave rural students behind in all of this. And so I'd like to get your impressions on that. And in turn with it, one of the issues that I see with it is prioritizing instructional facilities like schools and libraries, because right now administrative offices are also eligible, but as we look at the priorities, it seems to me that direct student services, while I don't diminish the role of administrators, when we have to prioritize, let's get it directly to those interactions with the students. So can you give me some impressions on what are we going to do on distribution? What are we going to do more efficiently with this program? And I'm going to ask my second question because I think it's related with it. One of the big complaints I get from my constituents about why more of them aren't applying for E-rate dollars, let me just be straightforward with this. There's 6 forms, and we don't have an army of people in New Hampshire to be able to, we can't hire, all this group of people to be able to put this application in. Maybe other larger school districts can do that. And we need to simplify this application. And I think that's something, because I've been reaching out to schools and libraries, how can we get more of these dollars to you, get more access to our students? So want to hear more about distribution, how do we direct it better, and how can we get this down to a very simplified application so that we don't disadvantage smaller states and rural areas based on bureaucracy?
Thank you, Senator. Those are good points. You might be surprised I agree with just about all you said, and also as a New Englander, I realize there are parts of New Hampshire that are very rural and have not traditionally been the beneficiary of most of our universal service programs. That's why I actually think the reform of the E-rate program is so substantial, because by reforming our Category 2 services, we are making Wi-Fi more available in more schools, and New Hampshire is among them. For the first time, New Hampshire as a state has been eligible for that support in several years. So we are going to find that more funds are actually going to flow to rural communities for Wi-Fi support, which I think is terrific and helpful. I take your point that schools and libraries and student-centered activities should be the focus. I'd be happy to follow up with you on your concern about administrative offices. And then finally—
Not that I don't think they should be eligible, but I think that if we prioritize, that
Sure.
should be the last priority as we look forward
Sure.
to serving students.
No, that's a fair point. I don't know enough about that today to get back to you on that. But your point about streamlining the application, I've gone around the country and spoken to lots of schools and student groups and state technology directors, and they all say the same thing. We streamlined the application in our reforms last year, but I will be the first to tell you it is not enough. It is a continuous process, and we need to have our ear to the ground and listen to the schools that apply for these services and find out what kind of bureaucratic impediments just make it hard for them to do so. So I think we've made improvements, but I think we can do more.
Good. I'm glad to hear you say you'll make this a priority, because obviously for my state, it's so critical. And I just wanted to follow up briefly on the issue of the open internet order. And one of the things that, in my view, was lacking in it was this idea of a independent cost-benefit analysis where many, the minority members on this decision had called for an independent cost analysis. And given, obviously, the Commission's directive to act in the public interest, convenience, necessity, Do you think it's important for the commission to include an independent cost-benefit analysis of its rules to ensure that it does meet the public's interest, convenience, necessity, which is your broader purpose?
That's right. The President had an executive order back in 2011 directing, to the extent feasible, that agencies engage in cost-benefit analysis when they make major decisions, and I fully support that. In 2010, when we first came up with these policies, we had a fairly extensive cost-benefit analysis. It is candidly less extensive in the most recent decision, in part because that was a response to an opinion from the Court of Appeals. But I take your point that that should be a part of our analysis going forward, and I could commit to doing that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.